If you ever doubted yourself and questioned whether you're a good mom, it's time you had an answer once and for all, so you don't have to doubt yourself again. My son became very resentful, and I don't blame him at all, because when I think about who I was at that point in my life, my son was avoiding me because I was breaking his spirit. There's no other way for me to describe that. And now we have this relationship where he comes to me and confides in me, and he tells me things that most kids are probably not going to their parents about. Sometimes I wish he had kept certain things to himself, but I would rather have it be that way than when he wasn't talking to me at all, and I really had to pull anything more than 1 or 2 words out of him. Now he'll tell me about the little things that interest him and excite him, and for a while he had stopped doing that because I'm not interested in the same things. And so when he would talk to me about cars, I would literally say to him, I'm not into that, and be very self-centered about what it is I want to talk about, and tell him that he had to learn to be better at talking about diverse topics than me just listening to him and then bringing up a diverse topic. So you see how that kind of behavior isn't really conducive to bonding and feeling close to your mom. And now he is back to being willing and excited to tell me about even the most mundane things because I changed how I lead and how I listen. He wants to spend time with me. Just this morning, he came in the room and, he generally waits until I come out of the room before we interact, but he came to me this morning and I said, "Hey, what's going on? You all right?" And he just came and he just wanted to lay his head on my shoulder, and I hugged his head and said, "I love you." Like he still wants that affection and attention just like he did when he was little. It's not as frequent, but it's not non-existent like it was before. And he tells me that he loves me because he really feels that way, and not because that's just what you're supposed to do, because that's your mom and you're supposed to love your mom. So in this episode, we're going to get into what it means to be a bad mom. And I know some people are going to be like, well, there's no such thing as a bad mom. But we all have our ideas of what a bad mom is. So we're going to talk about what it means to be a bad mom, my 2 cents, how even good moms hurt their kids, and what 2 things you can change that'll shape how you and your kids are able to move past the hurt that comes with years of yelling, fussing, whooping, cussing, criticizing, all the things, and start getting your household in order ASAP. I'm Tanisha, aka the VVS Life Coach, and I help moms learn to relax, regulate their emotions, and reconnect with their kids so we can change their mental health legacy. I have spent the last 3 years fixing the damage that I did over 5 years of creating this environment of toxic stress in my home. So let's start with the fact that bad moms don't question whether they are bad moms. If you're asking yourself the question, that means you're a mom who wants to grow and you want to see things be better. And there's no reason for a bad mom to do that, because a bad mom don't give a rip. So I want you to just think about all the examples that you've seen on TV. I hope that for us, we don't have anybody who has really experienced a truly bad mom, but I know that there are people who feel like their mom was bad. I can honestly say, especially now that I am in motherhood myself, I look at my mom with different eyes, and I realize that the only place I've ever seen what I consider to really be a bad mom is on TV. So I've been very fortunate with that. When I think about who my friends are and who I spend time with, like I don't personally know any moms who fit my definition of a bad mom. Do you go through your life just focused on you and being completely self-absorbed to the point that what your kids are going through doesn't matter and you don't care how they are affected by the things that you do? Society portrays single mom households as being less effective than a 2-parent household. And effectiveness of parenting doesn't depend on the number of parents in the house. It depends on the skills of those parents and their ability to move forward past their own childhood traumas and hurts. And so I need you to ask yourself, what are you doing? Like, legit, what are you doing that makes you even question whether you're a bad mom? Do you see in yourself that you are so hell-bent on having control over everything? And then just because you see that and recognize it, why are you then applying the label of bad mom to yourself? Because now that you are aware that that's something you're doing and you've noted that it's not serving your family, you get to use your control in a different way. It's not about trying to control your children. It's controlling how your household operates by improving the way you operate. You get to control and decide for yourself if you are going to continue to be that power-hungry, must-be-my-way mom, or if you're going to find some balance there. Ask yourself, what are you going to do with this information now that you have it? Dale Carnegie has one of my favorite quotes ever. And it's, knowledge isn't power until it's applied. So it doesn't matter if you can see the things. Now that it has your attention, what are you going to do about it? And instead of using where you need to grow as a area where you fall short or a reason to label yourself as bad and indulge in a pity party and start doing your e-horse speeches, get to work. Bad moms don't see themselves because they don't even care to try. So freaking try. Like, if you feel like a bad mom for whatever reason, then make yourself unbad by trying. When I think of a bad mom, as far as definition goes, I think about the women who are motivated by or even getting enjoyment out of watching their kids suffer. And I think about the mom from Push. If you've read that book by Sapphire or you've seen the movie Precious, that mom, there was a level of cruelty in her that I know must be out there, because that's not the only movie that shows that or written experience that gives that kind of account. But it makes my heart so sad. Just abusive, neglectful, and don't care. And seem to get a little bit of joy out of it for real. And so for me, if you don't fit into that category, there's nothing you can tell me where I'll be like, oh yeah, you're a bad mom. But if you're the mom that's like, Precious's mom, please don't come around here, because I don't have empathy for that. I struggle to think I would even have sympathy for that, because when you know that you have traumas in your life that are hurting you to that degree, and now you feel like you have to take it out on somebody else, there's a level of willful blindness in my mind that has to take place. Like, you don't see yourself ever, and so you think that that's okay? Or you see it and you think that these children just don't matter? I don't have it. So that's what I consider to be a bad mom, right? Shows no remorse, no effort to change or feel better about themselves by putting their kids down. They're not here trying to teach them. They just want to show that they are superior over somebody. They are chronically awful and will tell their kids that it's their own fault that they're being treated that way. That to me is a bad mom. And so maybe, yeah, you feel chronically awful. I felt like I was awful because I spent so much time yelling, and fussing, and whooping, and just being so buried under my own stress that I didn't think I had the capacity to pay attention to anybody else's. So I was very self-absorbed and self-centered during that particular period of my life because I felt like I was falling apart. And I know I caused hurt and damage there, but I also recognize that that doesn't make me a bad mom when I think about my own definition of a bad mom. And so I had to really recognize where my self-talk was coming into play and how I'm harder on myself than anybody is. Because even good moms hurt their kids. They don't mean to, But that's the nature of human beings. We all get hurt by something. But then it becomes, how do you make amends for that? And how do you prevent it from becoming a cycle? Bad moms don't pay attention to people like me. I can tell you that for sure. Bad moms don't come around here. So if you are even paying attention to this episode, that tells me you've seen yourself enough to know there are some things that you can work on. And you came here for your emotional toolbox so that we can start changing legacies in a way that money can't do. Your reactions to your kids not doing the things that you tell them to do have more to do with your own training from your own parents and what you've seen as the norm for dealing with this kind of situation. And anytime you go against the norm, it feels foreign and uncomfortable. And that's okay, because that's how I felt transitioning over to the way I parent now, instead of going straight to, there is only one way to solve all problems, and that's to get that belt. You have to give yourself permission to let go of your old training and decide for yourself what you want to replace it with. So what are the areas that you decide are really important in the grand scheme of your life and your kids' lives? And who are you on the inside? Who are you? Walk in that, model that, show your kids that. I know that you are not motivated by your child's misery. But if you are not careful, they will see it that way. Your goal is not to make your child suffer more than you did. And if that is your goal, this ain't the tribe for you. You've been doing the best you can. But now you realize that it can be better, right? So it doesn't matter that, oh, I gave it my best. My best can always improve. I can always learn something else that I can apply. I can always be a little bit kinder. I can always be slightly more thoughtful. There's always room for growth. I believe if I am not growing, why the heck am I here? So every day is about how I can grow in some way. And when I would think of my own behavior, I used to call myself a bad mom, but now I think of myself differently during that time. I have learned that I can be more gracious with myself and not jump straight to judgments of good or bad just because I feel a little guilty about the way I behaved. I've just learned to channel that guilt and use it as my accountability partner instead of the thing that I'm going to keep beating myself over the head with. I was the best mom that I knew how to be at that time in my life, but I can be an even better one. And I realized and accepted the fact that good moms hurt their kids too. That too is true. And knowing that truth, while it feels like in your face, is also really empowering. Because if I know that I am capable of hurting my child too, I get to decide how much of that I want to try to prevent and then grow myself in that area. I didn't want to keep talking to my son the way that I was talking to him. And you better believe that that behavior bled over into other environments or other relationships. And I just didn't want to be that kind of communicator anymore. I took feeling bad and did something with it instead of falling apart and acting like there's absolutely nothing I can do when my hands are tied. So it's a very empowering place to be. We don't mean to hurt them. We don't learn how to constantly be able to choose how we react to things. Your emotions are bodily sensations connected to thoughts that you have. And then your reaction is either automatically what your body is going to reflexively do to respond to the situation based on if you feel like you're in danger or not. We don't mean to hurt our kids, but when we don't learn about how constantly keeping our kids in this state of fear affects their emotional health, their brain development, their behavioral patterns, the relationships they have with other people, the relationships that they have with us, then we make these choices that hurt them more often than we realize. And it drives me crazy when I hear people say that The old me that I described is holding my son accountable, but the me who can just have a conversation with him and tell him to go do something, even if it's for the 100th time, without allowing myself to be all up in arms, is somehow ineffective. It blows my mind that we think the yelling, nitpicky, critical, physically violent version is what it looks like to hold somebody accountable, when if you went to work and they tried to hold you accountable for anything like that, you wouldn't work there very long. So it's just like, what? It doesn't even make sense. I'm not getting him ready for the real world by trying to hurt him before the world can. It's going to be tough enough out there. It's tough enough for me out there. When I come home, I want peace. And I know that it's no different for him. His stress looks different, but it's very present. It's very real. And our relationship has grown, and I can keep him accountable without me raising my blood pressure and going crazy and damaging our relationship in the process. It just doesn't make sense. There's too many of us who operate that way, and it hasn't served us. So why do we keep doing it? And then, oh, well, that's what being a good... No. If you thought that's what being a good mom was, you, again, wouldn't be paying attention to me, because when I was operating that way, I saw the damage that it was doing. And when I saw that, I couldn't continue to act like it was okay. And so once you wake up, what you gonna do? The other thing that a lot of us don't do is allow our kids to do what I call supervised struggling, where instead of me giving him some sort of hard, harsh consequence, especially around schoolwork, letting him suffer the consequences of not doing the work, letting him experience summer school, letting him experience things that I tried to warn him were possibilities. It's hard for a lot of us to sit in that. Because again, we don't like being uncomfortable, and we somehow internalize our child not meeting our expectations or doing something that we would prefer as a reflection of whether or not we are failing as moms. And so we try to save them from everything and give them consequences in the house, rather than them having to deal with consequences in the world that are going to teach them better than anything I could do. Because as we got closer towards graduation, since he'd already experienced the joys of summer school, he recognized that when I said, I'm not going to chase you for this work, and whatever it is that ultimately comes, you just let me know if I need to let the family know not to bother coming for graduation. He did what he must do, and he walked across that stage like everybody else, because at that point, yeah, he knows she gonna let me fail. She's not gonna chase me, because in the real world, nobody's gonna chase me. I'm just gonna get fired or whatever the case may be. And that's not what I want. So that was helping him build that inner want to, instead of me trying to beat the discipline into him. And when we have no ability to let them do the supervised struggling, we cut off their opportunities to solve problems on their own. And then we repeat those kinds of messages that they can't solve problems on their own by telling them that they have no common sense. So then they start to really believe that. And it just makes them even more helpless, because they don't believe that they're smart enough to solve their own problems. And it's easier to blame those problems on other people or circumstances. Please remember this. When you think about how your inner voice got to be what it is and where that came from, we are the ones programming their self-talk. So we have to be very careful when we tell them that they have no sense, that they can't do something, or do it in subtle ways, like just move out of the way. Just give it to me. Just let me do it. And if we remember the little details, like we are the ones programming their self-talk, then we're more careful and intentional about how we show up as moms. I go into real depth on the 7 worst mistakes moms make that create resentful kids who don't respect them. And it's a free presentation that I did, and I'll link it below. But I am going to spoil it for you, because I'm going to tell you the number one thing that we do that hurts our kids as good moms that we don't think about a lot of times. And this is based on what thousands of people have had to say on different posts of mine on Instagram. And if you're watching this on YouTube, again, the link is in the description. But if you're listening to this, go to rescueourrelationship.com and you can see all 7 things. But I'm going to spoil it. Here's number 1. The biggest way that we hurt our kids without meaning to is not taking accountability or admitting that we are wrong, but we expect them to do that. We don't acknowledge just being flat out wrong about something that we've accused them of that they didn't actually do. We don't apologize to them because we overreact to something, because we have this idea that if I say sorry, then I'm a punk, I'm a sucker, and you gonna think you can walk all over me, and that's not happening here because I'm not one of your little friends, and it goes on. But we have to let that go. We have to stop sacrificing their entire toolbox for adulthood survival because it hurts our pride. It's never comfortable to apologize, but if we're wrong, we gotta say that, even to our kids. That goes so much farther with them. Farther, I can't remember. I'm gonna say further. I don't know why I'm still hung up on that. It's time to let that go. It is time for us to stop sacrificing their entire adult toolbox to survive in this world and come out of it with the best emotional, mental, and physical shape that's possible, because it hurts our pride. We have to put that behind us if we really want healthy kids going out into the world. I know I do. So I had to stop pretending that I am somebody that I'm not, stop holding myself to an impossible standard, and just learn how to be better. And that's what my mission is, to help other moms like me do. You see yourself and now you want to do better. You don't have all the time that I had at that point in my life to look up all this stuff. But if you can get it all here, well, here you are. So we're gonna be the emotional leaders. And leaders don't just wing it and hope for the best. We are going to step into the role. And in order to do that, we have to know the keys to raising emotionally healthy kids. And we have to model those things. We got to show them what it looks like in real life. And that means investing in our learning and practicing applying the things that we learn about. There's so much out there that I know that it can be overwhelming. And so that then stops you from looking for more information. And then somebody like me comes up on your feed and it's like, oh, that makes sense. I forgot that's something that I wanted to look up or learn more about because you're busy. So I'm coming and saying all the things that we think about, but we forget, or we don't talk about with our friends because it's embarrassing, or it makes you feel guilty, and that's uncomfortable. And again, we don't like being uncomfortable. But it's my goal to make sure that we're paying attention to that discomfort so we can use it to grow and save you some time and some painful steps. It took me years to learn this stuff, and it wasn't just from learning the hard way with my son, but it was also from my research on so many things like psychology, communication, and brain development, and emotional intelligence, and trauma, and relational intelligence, and goal success, and people-pleasing recovery, and you name it. All because I knew, especially because of how desperately my son had tried to get away from it all, that I had to help him. But I can't help him if I cannot help myself. And so I had to focus on healing, reparenting, revising me. And if I had it to do over again, I would start in the 2 places that I'm about to tell you now. These are the biggest difference makers in how your relationship with your kids continues to go and how effective you are as a mom. The 2 biggest areas that make a difference are the way you respond when you are stressed and how you control or choose your reactions to the things going on around you. When I was not managing my stress very well, I was short, I was bossy, I was mean, I was violent, and then I started to notice those things in my son. And I knew that that's not who I want him to be, so I can't be that person. In my book, The Real Pain of Stress, I talked about my big reactions to even the littlest things and how that made my son afraid of me. And nobody wants to be around somebody that makes them feel scared and uncomfortable all the time. And when he needed my support the most, it took him a lot of time to tell me something that really shook me to my core and started me down this path in the first place, because the pressure that he experienced with school and bullying because he was one of the smallest kids in his grade, and then coming home to feel threatened all the time, just made him look for a more permanent solution to his pain. So this is too important to me personally to know the things that I know and not try to save you the time and heartache of having to find these things out the hard way. And I think it's the big sister in me, because I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And I recognize that there are some life lessons that are too good to not share them. And that even if I'm embarrassed or hurt, I still have to keep going with the message, because I've seen too much and I've lived through too much. And I know that there are other moms out here like me, and I need them to know they're not by themselves. So if I had it to do over again, I would have learned more about effective stress management and emotions a whole lot sooner. But I'm grateful to God for the experience, because through my struggles, I learned to be a much better person and a much better mom. I learned the key pieces that really have the potential to do for you what they did for us, and that's bring you closer to your kids before they write you off and try to get away from you as quickly as possible by any means necessary. I learned how to embrace my vulnerability, and as you can already tell, I'm a bit of a waterhead, and put aside any embarrassment that I have around my own story so that I can operate in my purpose. And I'm on this healing mission for your kids as much as for my own, because I just think about the next generation, and it doesn't have to be so hard. We can leave them a different kind of legacy, but not if we can't see it, because we can't fix what we can't see. So if you are ready to start paying more attention to the things that you're doing that are signaling maybe a new focus for you in 2025, go watch my free training, or presentation is what I've been calling it. But whatever it is, go watch it. The 7 worst mistakes that moms make that create resentful kids who don't respect them. And stop doing that stuff. Like, I can't, that's the best thing I can tell you to do. Watch that, and then stop doing those 7 things. And the first one is all about accountability. So if you are watching this, it's down below in the description. If you're listening to this, go to rescueourrelationship.com. Thank you so much for being here. In the next episode, I'm going to answer the question, is it too late to fix us? And share my formulas for being able to evaluate the situation for yourself to see where your relationship is.